What's up everyone, Pierre here from Into Fly Fishing, and welcome to our channel where we talk about all things fly fishing. In today's video we'll be looking at 5 of the best techniques, the best fly fishing techniques that you can use on freshwater fish species. It will help you to catch a lot more fish. We're going to be talking about each technique on a relatively high level, but it should give you a good understanding of each technique so that you can go and try it out for yourself. Let's dive in. Although fishing a dry fly won't always guarantee you fish, I've included it into this list because of 2 reasons. The first one is that if you see a big rainbow come and sip your beautifully laid down tiny dry fly from the surface, it's just the best thing in the world. I don't think there's maybe seeing a GT eat a big semper, but it's second to that. It's really incredible to see that. But the main reason why I have included it is that if the fish are feeding off the surface, if they've dialed into a hatch that's coming off, you need to be able to present a dry fly accurately and very delicately and softly and all of that. So this technique is really essential for the freshwater angler. Depending on your preference and your casting stroke, a medium fast action or a medium action rod is ideal. It doesn't mean that you can't do it with a fast action rod, but medium fast and medium is sort of preferred for dry fly fishing. It just allows you to lay that fly down very softly, and the leader needs to be very long and supple so that you can get drag free drifts and create a very natural looking drift for the fly. Dry flies work equally well on still waters, so not only on rivers, but they equally work well on still waters in late afternoon when you see there's a hatch coming off and the fish are rising. This is the time to throw a dry fly. Nymphing has hit the fly fishing world with an absolute force. It's like this new craze, this new thing, but it's actually been around in various forms for very long. There are different techniques or slight variations of nymphing, and everybody likes to call it something different. You get Euro nymphing, tightline nymphing, Czech nymphing, Polish nymphing, French nymphing, tightline nymphing, upstream nymphing. I don't know, there's so many different forms of nymphing, but nymphing overall means that we are fishing weighted nymphs, or in most cases weighted nymphs, so that we can get down to where the fish are holding as quickly as possible. Now, with all these forms of nymphing that we just spoke about, you don't use a floating strike indicator. And I would recommend not using a floating strike indicator because it makes your presentation a lot more drastic, or it just isn't as finesse or as subtle as you would get with other styles of fishing, and you can't also adapt to the depths as you would like to with all your other standard nymphing techniques or new nymphing techniques. The leader is very long, and it includes a piece of sighter material that you use to detect takes. The rods are very long, so 10 feet and up, and they are very sensitive in their tips so that you can detect takes a lot better. If you'd like to know more about Euro nymphing, we have a video series just about Euro nymphing, which covers everything you need to know from start to finish, or not really finish because I don't think it will ever finish. It will just keep adapting, but it covers everything you need to know, so be sure to check that out. The links are in the description down below. Sometimes you'd like to fish the surface and a subsurface part of the water column in one drift, and this is where the dry dropper rig comes in. An added benefit of the dry dropper rig is that the dry fly acts as a very lightweight and delicate strike indicator, and it will help you to detect any takes on the nymph. Depending on how far you would like to cast your dry dropper rig, you can tie a dry dropper combination on your standard dry fly rig, as we just spoke about earlier. Or what I do is, if the casts are going to be less than 30 feet, I add the dry dropper rig into my Euro nymphing rig with my long 10-foot rod. And this enables you to be very adaptable and have a couple of tools in your fishing toolbox when you are Euro nymphing. So all that you do then is that on your Euro nymphing rig, let's say you're fishing 2 flies, your top fly you replace with a very buoyant dry fly or the dry fly of your choice, and the bottom fly you usually go slightly lighter because this dry fly needs to float it. And now suddenly you've gone from fishing very deep, incredibly deep Euro nymphing, now you're fishing very shallow, and this works very well when the fish are sitting in the top portion of the water column or if you're fishing very shallow runs. The dry dropper rig is also, in my opinion, a very underrated still water fishing technique, especially if you are sight fishing to fish from the bank of a still water or a lake. If the 3 previous techniques did not produce the goods, it's time to bring out the big guns. This is the time to swing a wet fly or a streamer through the pool. There's nothing that saves the day like a small black woolly bugger swung through a pool. Ideally, you would want to step up the tippet size because the takes can be quite more aggressive than when you are Euro nymphing or fishing a dry fly. So if you are fishing 5x, I would at least go to 4x, just because in many cases that initial thump is a lot harder. If you are going to be dedicated streamer or wet fly fishing in a river, I would use a shorter leader and a fly line specifically suited for you where you want to fish in the water column or the speed of the water. But you can also fish streamers or wet flies in your standard dry fly or your standard Euro nymphing rig. So it all depends on what rig you have with you on the water. But if you want to do dedicated streamer or wet fly fishing, a good fast action rod is ideal. Fast action rod just generates a lot more line speed, so it helps you to shoot that slightly heavier streamer or less aerodynamic streamer through the air, and a standard 9 to 12 feet leader would be perfect. Now, if you're fishing very shallow rivers, what I do is I fish standard floating lines with as long leader as I can get away with. But if you're fishing deeper rivers, you would want to go to some sort of sinking line or a line with a sinking tip. If you're fishing for stillwater trout or lake trout, there's nothing that works as well as fishing multiple flies. Now, what this allows you to do is fish multiple parts of the water column, or what you can do is you can include combinations of flies. So for instance, what we do in a local dam, we have an attractor pattern like a blob, which is very bright and it's slightly like fluorescent-y, and that attracts the fish. But right behind it, about 2 feet behind it, we trail a very natural looking, either a dragonfly or a natural colored woolly bugger, and that is what usually gets to eat. But what makes this rig so effective is that highly visible fly that pulled in the fish from far. In order to successfully fish multiple flies, you have to be able to cast this Christmas tree of flies that's tied in front of your leaders. So what I do is I slightly open my loop, so it's not as tight anymore as I would use when I'm only fishing one fly. So I open my loop slightly, especially when the wind is behind me, and that helps me to cast all these flies together. I fish stillwaters with a 6 weight or a 7 weight rod, so either a 9 foot or a 10 foot is ideal. And for shallowish dams, or if the fish are holding shallow or feeding off the surface, I'll go with a floating fly line. That I can vary all the way down to like a DI7, which sinks at 7 inches per second. Although we only scraped the surface of my 5 favorite fly fishing techniques, I hope that this video served to provoke interest into them, so that you can either go and do more research about them, which you can find down in the links in the description down below, or that you can go out on the water, most importantly, and try them yourself. Remember, there's no replacement for time on the water and practice. No YouTube video can make you an instant perfect caster or a dry fly angler or anything like that. You need to spend time on the water yourself to try and practice that. And if you practice these techniques and you master them, then you'll see that these 5 good fly fishing techniques will really improve your angling. Please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notifications, then we can let you know as soon as we release any future videos like these. Until next time, cheers.